He joins us in studio now. Great to have you with us, Professor.
Thank you.
So you say that these aftershocks are still being felt. We are recovering, but we could slip back into another recession. Is that why we're still not out of crisis in a sense?
The recovery in the US is fairly solid compared to other places. The recovery in Europe is not solid at all and will take longer. And partly it's because of the austerity measures that they've imposed, which the US hasn't done. In fact, the US did quite the opposite of austerity, put income into people's pockets so that they were able to spend their way out of recession, as well as the quantitative easing that you were mentioning.
The US, though, it seemed like a great story, like that stimulus was working so well at one stage. Now there's dimming prospects, some data coming out that's mixed, and this irony. So the dollar shot up because of all the good data earlier. Now the dollar is a threat to US exports. So how is that biggest economy really looking?
The US is doing fine, and I think it's just a hiccup. I think the recovery in the US is solid. It is not going to be astronomical because it was a deep crisis. And I think the dollar rate, when it was euro-US dollar rate, was 1.5. I said at the time it should drop to 1.2 and probably dip even below to 1.1 before bouncing back. And I think this is what we're witnessing at the moment. And all these predictions are on Twitter if somebody wants to check them. So economics has become more of a science. There's more mathematics at the background, making economic models more complicated and taking more aspects into account that early models didn't take.
Well, let me challenge that, because lay people get frustrated. I get frustrated. You want economists to just look at the problem and know how to fix it. But we've seen world thinkers take two different paths. You're talking about it in America, stimulus. In Europe, it was austerity. Looking at where everybody is now, there doesn't seem to be great shakes anywhere. Maybe the US is looking better. But can we say that definitely works? That definitely doesn't work. Is it becoming more scientific? Because it doesn't look like that to outsiders.
It is more scientific now, but there are also these unforeseeable shocks that happen to the system. One possible shock is if the war in Yemen extends beyond the borders, what's going to happen to a region that provides up to a third of the world's supply of oil and has more than half of the proven reserves of oil. That could be a massive shock that is not predictable, and that is something that develops depending on the politicians, really.
So you can't see everything that's coming. You do say you have a new model, because sometimes there are warning signs that are misread. They're not big enough, and then it can be a big turn. Just explain that to me, and how could it work practically?
So the traditional idea of following the macroeconomy and seeing where it's going is to find leading indicators to try and guide the central bankers and the governments into reacting early. But these leading indicators didn't include microeconomic firm-level data. And this is the innovation that we brought in to try and detect the crisis early. And this is how we detected the crisis, Gabriel Taman, myself, my co-author, way back in 2007.
And did you give strong warnings? Because some people are saying, yeah, we saw it coming. Were you giving those warnings? Yes,
and the difference is we gave precise moments of time where or windows of time where this would be happening, and these were short windows within a year. And also after the crisis in 2009, when everybody was preaching doom and gloom and the collapse of the financial system and the world capitalist economy, we said no, that the US would recover within a year, which it did, and we said Europe would not recover for a very long time. It's all based on reacting to policy stimuli or policy impulses, whether they're from the central bank or from the government, and they have to work in tandem. So the quantitative easing by the central bankers is not sufficient to get Europe out of a recession.
Okay, so what does that mean now? Could we see another recession in Europe? Of course, Greece is there making things unstable. And what does it mean for emerging markets like our own?
Yes, so first of all, in terms of Europe, I'm afraid the Western governments have to really look again and reconsider the very hard stance on the fiscal policy and the austerity they have, because America didn't have an austerity package. It was quite the opposite. It helps to get them out of the system. The monetary policy, interest rates have been sufficiently low for sufficiently long. Quantitative easing sufficiently significant is not enough to get them out of that For example, if you're a new company setting up, or if you're a company thinking of expanding your line of work, production and so on, you have cheap credit, you have free credit almost. But your main concern is, will you be able to sell what you're producing or not? And since the consumers are not having...
So should Europe be pumping even more money,
less money
into its economy?
More income. So tax rebates to the ones that are spending the most, trying to reduce value-added tax initially, and then eventually raising it if necessary. But these are the things to encourage initially some spending. There will be some deficits. This is normal in a recession. And this will pull these countries out of the recession. In terms of the impact on developing economies, developing economies that have a big debt will have to think of the following mix, because the US dollar is going to get stronger. The US interest rates are going to go higher. So this is going to affect interest payments and so on. The euro, on the other hand, I don't see interest rising anytime soon for the euro. So the mix of euro and US dollar debt is something they need to consider. Commodity prices are going to go up with the recovery, barring any political shocks.
That's good news for us.
Yes. But at the same time, oil prices are going to rise from the depressed level they're at now.
All right, so it's always a seesaw. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Professor Karim Abadir from Imperial College London.